slightly over here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It says to start my video, but that started already, right?
Yes, yes, for sure.
Okay.
Okay, good. Now we are on air. Here is Michelle, and now your turn. You're on air, and you are going to speak. Michelle, you can share the screen if you wish, if you have the presentation. The stage is yours.
Yeah. So you have. Can you see it at the moment?
Yeah. No, I'm not see the presentation. I see your face, and I see how you're talking.
Okay. I have started to share it, so I hope that's visible.
Not visible yet?
Okay, 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea what's going on here. Right, share. Desktop. You should be seeing it. Can you see it?
No. Yeah, now it's good. It's working. Okay, go ahead. You're online.
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. I hope everybody's well. We had a few problems in terms of connection, and I hope you can kind of hear me clearly and see me clearly. Apologies for the delay. It's a real pleasure to join you today. I'm here to really talk a little bit more around my journey around blockchain, and then what I think around digitization and where we're heading, with digitization as a whole, but also in terms of blockchain as well. So thanks very much for having me here. It's a real pleasure. So where do we start? Why digitize? I suppose people will be asking me, I've had lots of people asking me questions around, why digitize? Why do we focus so much around the digital side of things? I think, kind of given the current circumstances, with the challenges that we're having with COVID-19, the massive, massive impact that has had on all global economies, it's a really good example as to why we should digitize, and it's absolutely crucial, I think, to look at elements of digitization and what that actually means for societies as we move ahead. So why digitize? I think in terms of obviously improving connectivity and access for different global economies, I think is very, very vital that we try and look at, how we digitize, but also in terms of accessing new markets and supporting the development of new markets, particularly now with the challenges that we're having with COVID-19. I mean, it doesn't really matter what country or city you're in, there are massive challenges. So opportunities to diversify and look at new markets, I think, is really, really crucial moving forward. Of course, converged innovations, you have a whole range of, really innovative technologies that are coming to fore at the moment and are really starting to grow and expand and being utilized. So it's really important, I think, we start to look at the innovation side of things and how we start to looking at, convergence as well. Now, in terms of demographics, shifts in terms of demographics, of course, in different parts of the world. I mean, what is going to be the impact of COVID-19 as a result of, the demographic shifts in different countries? What is going to be the impact around that? Are we looking at data to try and understand what the impact of demographics will be moving forward? Very, very important. By the end of the day, it's about, kind of reinventing, and creating new business models and really leveraging data and a whole range of other things to create those new business models as we move ahead. Digitization is core in so many levels on supply chain and a whole range of other areas. But it is important that, we look at the different stages of development around digitization, and these will vary in different countries. Certainly from my experience, that's what I've seen. Now, in terms of examples of disruptive technologies, obviously massive disruption.
Just please turn off your online video on another device because we are hearing you twice.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now it works. Yes, but your microphone here is turned off. Turn it on and go ahead.
Better?
Yes, now it works.
Okay.
But I hear me once more time. What's going on your side?
Nothing at all. It's quite quiet from my end.
I hear myself.
Right. Is it echoing from your end? Nothing at all. It's quite quiet from my end.
Okay, no problem. Because from my side is no echo. It's impossible. Okay, go ahead, Michelle. I'm sorry.
Okay, no, that's all right. So yeah, as I was saying, I mean, there are various, range of different technologies at the moment that we can leverage and we can tap on. A lot in terms of looking at COVID and the challenges we've had there. Obviously, a lot of companies have been investing in utilizing, technologies like 3D printing for masks and a whole range of other, face shields and other things to mitigate against the virus. So AI, of course, has been utilized by many companies and startups as well, sort of combining AI and blockchain to look at solutions that can help to mitigate against the virus as well. But more generically, I mean, even apart from the virus, I think as we move forward, we're going to see a lot more usage of these combinations of technologies. Apology, this seems to have been, and of course we're living in a digital world. As you can see, millions and billions of users, for example, are using social media, are looking at sort of active internet users, but this is going to evolve as we progress. There'll be loads of sort of the total population, and their engagement with digital is shifting daily. Yes, the pandemic has increased that engagement, digitally, but we're going to see a lot more usage, I think, of digitization as a whole as we move forward, be it around things like platforms and a whole range of other areas. Blockchain. Now, this is an area that I have been looking at for quite some time now. There is definitely a lot more movement now in terms of the blockchain space. I think in the early days where people kind of associated blockchain more so with cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, I think we're slightly starting to evolve and starting to see enterprise models really coming to fore, looking at sort of supply chain solutions coming to fore, looking at innovations around farming, agriculture, and agribusiness, in developing countries as well is very, very exciting to see, to see this industry starting to really grow. Of course, you're going to start seeing a little bit more, fragmentation as well, as you notice the kind of smaller players kind of leaving the market, and maybe the more established players who've done a lot more research and development remaining to the marketplace. So we see a little bit of a shift there, I think, as we move ahead. So in terms of investment, there's been a huge amount of investment into the blockchain space, especially around sort of the startup phase. I think what I would like to see a little bit more of is actually investment into more women-led, blockchain businesses and supporting more and more women who are coming into the space. In fact, I'm encouraging a lot more women to come into this space. We all know what the main benefits of blockchain are, and really ultimately at the end of the day, that tool or, that enabler blockchain that creates that trust and that transparency in terms of, conducting transactions, I think is very, very critical. But at the end of the day, I think we need to start to invest a little bit more into the research and development and really trying to understand those use cases that have either kind of come into life and how we start to drive those forward. How do we invest a little bit more into those use cases and develop, sectors? And then from developing sectors, you also, the sectors are also influencing starting to grow economies as well, which is absolutely fundamental. So in terms of investment, yes, there's quite a lot of investment. I think that's going to shift slightly in the short term, obviously because of the challenges that COVID has brought in. I mean, investors will be very, very cautious about where they place their money, and there'll be a lot of challenges around, okay, how do we kind of secure the right funding? But I think technology as a whole, or the tech sector, will very much still be, an area that investors will be very, very interested in. The challenges around things like liquidity, the challenges around sort of cross-border lending, the challenges around sort of digital assets, all that is going to come to fore as we move forward. Now, use cases in terms of, for example, government use cases, I've been very more involved around sort of the government side and what different governments have been doing around the world. I mean, these are just examples of things that are happening in different parts of the world. I've been involved quite a lot from the Bermuda side, where the government is very, very much championing the fintech ecosystem and starting to build up really innovative solutions around the country, but also in the lens of trying to support people. So also the upskilling argument, building skills, supporting skills, especially tech skills, sort of data scientists and a whole range of others. Very, very important, I think, to invest into the skill set. But countries are certainly doing a lot and starting to look at blockchain quite heavily. China is one of the countries that, of course, is very much pushing, pushing ahead around blockchain, and is really set forward a very strategic plan in terms of implementing blockchain for the country and supporting blockchain growth and development, which is very, very interesting. And I think you will see quite a lot of action, coming from not necessarily just blockchain, but in terms of technology as a whole, be it quantum, AI and blockchain. You see quite a lot of activity, I think, from the China side. It will be interesting to kind of see what happens beyond, obviously, the COVID crisis. It's a huge challenge at the moment, and the focus at the moment is very much on the crisis. But it'll be interesting to see how these technologies, take shape as we move forward in the different countries. And certainly in the context of Africa, I think, it's really important to flag this, page, because at the end of the day, I think Africa is one of those areas where you're going to see a lot of potential growth, but that is very much a huge caveat around that because of the challenges we're seeing today. When you're thinking in terms of the impact of COVID, might not have huge numbers of people affected by COVID in Africa, but at the same time we don't really we can't really tell 100% what the numbers look like as well if you start to look at things like data and how data collection and all that is conducted and measured. So very, very heavy caveat there, but they sort of the impacts that fall out of COVID-19 are pretty significant for the continent of Africa, and it's important we start to mitigate around those by investing in the right places, really supporting the SMEs, and the free trade area is very much set forward to try and do that by opening up supply chains, supporting digital trade and e-trade across the continent. So very, very exciting, I think, in terms of what will come out of Africa, but we have to be very careful that we mitigate the impacts as a result of COVID, especially in terms of, looking at budgets and financing, which again has been a challenge. There's been a huge effort from other parts of the world to obviously support, but I think there also has to be a, sort of internally driven investment that is also channeled into the continent as well. But a huge opportunity in terms of the blockchain and crypto space, huge opportunity to actually grow that marketplace in Africa, I think. Of course, challenges around sort of trading system and the digital trade, especially now with COVID, I've highlighted a little bit. Fragmentation as well will have some impacts there. But huge opportunities, I think, around sort of value chains and what you can do there, and trading and doing business in Africa, I think, will become more and more prominent as markets open and ease up as well. So, what other opportunities do we have? I mean, in the space, of course, decentralized finance is taking a lot of prominence as well. Loads of people around the world have no means of access to finance. I think this market is starting to tailor, its packaging and its offering towards around, people like that, cross-border trade deals as well, where you can actually start being very creative and innovative around the offerings that you're giving around, cross-border trade as well, which is very, very exciting. So I think I'm quite excited around, what happens with decentralized finance and how that heads down and the different packages that are coming out, that are layered up on top of the blockchain as a result of decentralized finance.
Michelle, please, we don't have so much time. A little bit faster.
Sure. I know we started very late, so I will just rush off, finish off the slides. Mm-hmm. But a lot of it was deaf. I'll leave this. I'm sure you can kind of cover. The other thing I really wanted to point out was, of course, the interest around sort of central bank digital currencies and what's happening with that. You can look at the slides afterwards, and heavy engagement in different countries as well. We're looking at sort of reporting into Bank of England at the moment as well, even here, to look at what the impact will be, and what the impact can be as a result of investing in central bank digital currencies. So I won't spend too much time on that. Again, I have highlighted these very, very quickly. With this mix, I think is very, very important. We'll start to see some traction. It won't be blockchain in isolation, but a whole combination of different technologies, and which will address different areas, including things like infrastructure. And then that maturing of the digital platforms as well is something that we'll start to see. to happen, of course. And then, kind of a final note, it's a pity that we didn't have time. Obviously, we had technical issues here, but I think I would have liked to really flag in terms of the importance of encouraging more talent, more diversity into the blockchain space. Women have a huge role to play, for example. And in fact, I love that I'm seeing so many more women coming into this space, and that's fantastic. And we need to really start to invest a lot more in really promoting that and shouting that. I'll leave it as that. I'm really sorry that it was a bit rushed. But certainly you can get in touch with me if you would like to have a longer conversation, and I can talk you through some of my experiences more globally. We just didn't have time today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michelle. Perfect speech. Thank you. Now we are clearly understand how women's impact is over the world in your perspective as well. Michelle, I have to say you goodbye. Our time is over. It's very good and interesting speech. See you a little bit later again. Yes, now we go out of the air, and now our next panel is coming.
Sure.
Michelle, bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thanks a lot.
Please disconnect from here. Yeah.
Okay, we'll do.
Okay, now we are on air. Everything works fine. And today's topic is going to be about decentralized financial system challenges and advantages. Our panelists are Alexander Kitch, Kelvin Ng, Alessio Quadrilli, Daniel D. Weiner, and we're waiting for Onyanin, CEO of Cointelligence. Now all the panelists are always here, and I think the best way to start for someone. Oh, Onyanin also connected to us. Onyanin, the first word go to you. Just make introduction and introduce all the panelists. Your mic is off. Please turn it on and go ahead. We don't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, for sure. Now it's clear.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. So who do we have? So we have Alessio, we have Calvin, we have Alexander. Okay, great. So I'm just going to start by introducing myself. I'm the founder and CEO of Cointelligence and Cointelligence Academy. At Cointelligence, we focus on education and research. We've analyzed more than 400 different blockchain and crypto companies, and our main focus these days is our academy. We are educating people about blockchain and crypto. We have free sessions, we have paid sessions, and we obviously connect the research with the education. That's a little bit about Cointelligence. Me, myself, personally, I'm beside the fact that I'm the founder and CEO, I'm also taking part in the research team. I'll just pass it on now to who would like to introduce himself next, please? Calvin.
All right, sure.
You move.
Okay, so I'm Kelvin from Plutus Ventures. We are a 200 million US venture fund. We have invested so far into more than 43 blockchain companies around the world. Our latest investment, whether direct or indirect, includes Compound, MakerDAO, Amber, and so on.
Nice.
Quick intro.
Thank you for that. Alessio, you want to go for, next?
Sure. My name is Alessio Quaglini. I'm the CEO of Hex Trust. We are a fintech company, and we focus on custody and building the financial markets infrastructure for digital assets.
Thank you for that. Alexandra, do you want to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. So Alexandre Kesh, CEO of On-Chain Custodian. So On-Chain Custodian is a Singapore-based digital asset custody service. We also offer open finance services like lending and investment products to our customers who are exchanges, but also high net worth individuals and funds.
Thank you for that. So let's start with explaining just briefly what is DeFi, because we are here to discuss DeFi and the aspects of different DeFi. And is there anyone from the panelists that would like to explain the meaning of DeFi the way that they see it? So I'll do it. So basically, DeFi stands for decentralized finance. And there's still a lot of talks around the definition of DeFi, and there's many arguments around the definition. For example, you basically can say about any project that has a smart contract that it's a DeFi project, but that's not the case. Some people will say that that Bitcoin is an example of DeFi, and some will say that Ethereum or Ethereum-based applications are considered to be DeFi. So there's no set rules yet, and there's no clear agreement in the industry with regards to that. But I'll just give you a few examples, and I'm talking about the audience now. I don't need to educate the panelists. I'll just give you a few examples of DeFi. For example, Calvin mentioned the Maker. Maker is a great example of a DeFi protocol that actually allows you to peg, and it's using an algorithm in order to do that. Another example of DeFi would be basically Maker and basically everything around lending and borrowing. We are seeing different companies, DeFi companies, going into that. We also see decentralized exchanges. Obviously, that's probably the biggest example to give. And I do want to discuss today shortly about the different problems that we have with DeFi. But before that, let's start. And I gave a very, very brief introduction about DeFi. Obviously, I will need at least 30 minutes to do a proper introduction for DeFi, but we do not have the time for that. And I'll just move on to the first question that I have for the panelists today. So I'll start with you, Alessio, and I'll ask you, what do you think are the main obstacles for the adoption of DeFi?
Okay. Well, first of all, I think that there's a lot of obstacles because it's a complete shift of how we do things in the financial services. The adoption of DeFi, I mean, has been, I would say, slow, especially when compared with the theory. Yeah, but I mean, we're seeing recently quite a good pickup, and this is for a number of reasons. But in terms of obstacles, if we need to summarize 3 obstacles, I would say that the first one is that it's basically a new field for experiments innovation, right? So there is no, until recently, there was no clear, intuitive platforms, UI, UX that would facilitate the usage of these platforms. Yeah. And then not to talk about the fact that if you want to use DeFi, you have to use cryptocurrencies or blockchain protocols, and there's a lot of complications when you want to move from the traditional currencies to the cryptocurrencies. Secondly, technical risk. If there's a bug in a smart contract, basically there's a risk that the funds that are locked or that are used by the smart contract could be lost. So obviously this creates some risks that are hard to measure, especially when you consider the fact that a lot of decentralized applications still rely on oracles, which pose additional operational risk due to manipulation of price feeds, etc. Yeah? And thirdly, I would probably say liquidity. Yeah, I mean, liquidity is improving, and I mean, you mentioned Maker. Obviously, it's a very successful example. If we look at Compound, the other one that was mentioned by Kelvin, is it's taking off quite quickly. But I mean, decentralized systems, I would say, when compared to centralized systems, are still much less liquid, and they also require a substantial amount of capital because all these systems are usually collateralized.
Thank you for that answer. Any of the panelists would like to add anything to what Alessio said? Alexander, you want to say something? Okay.
No, just that I would concur to what Alessio said. I guess it's still very early stage. That would be my primary reason. The primary challenge of decentralized finance is that it's quite early stage. There are still a lot of experiments that sometimes fail, and that's normal. That's called innovation, and nothing can be perfect from a start. but we will see more of those developing in the future for sure, and as well as liquidity increasing. Something important I want to mention is that it shouldn't be a religion war between centralized and decentralized. I think there's room for both type of services. Some people will prefer to be decentralized. Some others will prefer to be able to knock at a door when something goes wrong, meaning at a centralized place, and sue that company. So I think there's room for both centralized and decentralized, and they might be even interlinked at one point of time in the future.
I have to say that I completely agree with you, and it's not a very popular opinion, especially if you talk to maximalists. I completely agree with you, and I do think that we're going to see both of them, and there is a chance that maybe they will be also connected. I'd like to add to what Alessio was saying, that I think that one of the biggest problems that we have at the moment is regulation. I think that the lack of clarity makes many entrepreneurs decide not to go into it, or even if they decided to start, they decided to stop because they've seen what happened with the ICOs. And the SEC is indicting ICOs one after the other. And in some cases, it should be that way, by the way, in my opinion. But it just makes people very scared because they don't know what to expect. And I'd say that the second problem, and I think that's connected to the regulation and why the regulators will take their time even much more than what they did until now. It's been like a few years since we started seeing ICOs, and they still didn't regulate it in a proper way. I do think that the biggest problem with decentralized is the lack of the possibility to control, and that means that terrorism and criminals will be able to use these platforms and these service providers and these products, and that's a problem. Now, moving on to another question, I'd like to ask Calvin, can you tell us from your experience, how do you look at the DeFi market at the moment? How do you see the DeFi market evolving? Are there any specific companies beside the ones that you mentioned that you already invested in that you're looking at? Anything that you can share from your experience about the DeFi industry, let's call it, even though it's wrong to say the DeFi industry, but you know what I mean. Anything that you can educate us with regards to DeFi the way that you see it?
So if you look at from an investor perspective, the DeFi market is probably divided into two areas whereby we look at it. One part would be that we look at the DeFi market as something that would disrupt the traditional finance market, which some of the DeFi business model might do that. And then we look at on the left-hand side is DeFi products that can make money. So we only invest into these two categories of DeFi business. One is that they can do disruption, they can make noise over the whole entire market. And on the left-hand side, we invest into those that we think that they will make us money. This is how we look at the whole sector of the market. Apart from that, those that we also look at DeFi products or business model that probably can move fast and make money faster in the short term to mid-term basis, but we do not look at products that will only show results in the mid to long term.
Calvin, please go a little bit back to see your whole face, not only the mouth.
Oh, sure, no problem.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
All right. Okay. All right. So as I said that we look at it from a perspective that because as a venture fund, a fund is anything between 3 years to 5 years. So we have to make back the money for our LPs. So in DeFi, we don't look at something that is too long term. Anything that can run fast and show the money or show the users or make breaking news globally that they're disrupting the lending market or something like that. This is what we look at. Now, another problem with the blockchain and the crypto and the DeFi market is that there is no entry barrier. Basically, everybody can do it. Okay, tomorrow you can start an exchange and your best buddy can start an exchange. Everybody can start an exchange. But this is all changing. Regulations, law, and everything is coming. This is how we see it. So moving forward, crypto exchange everywhere in the world, they have to get a license, right? So without a license, I don't think so you can go anywhere.
I agree. I agree with you, and I think that that's where the world is going to. Anyone has something to add before I ask the next question? Okay.
James, please connect to us. Yes, you are sitting here without video. Just will be great to hear from you as well. Yeah.
Oh, hello, James.
Hello, how are you?
I even didn't know that you're connected with us. Sorry about that. Did you introduce yourself?
I did not.
Oh, so please go ahead and introduce.
James Rao with Toro Capital in Houston, Texas.
Thank you for that. And let me ask another question. I think that I'll go for we talked about actually this. I'd like to ask Alexandra the next question. Alexandra, what do you think is the role of third-party custodians in playing in the mainstream adoption of open finance, centralized or decentralized?
I think we provide a single window access to all those solutions for our customers. And I'm sure Alessio would agree with that. I mean, it's not that easy to maneuver around all those solutions, to do due diligence of all those solutions, to connect to all those solutions in a secure way and insured way. And that's what we provide as a third-party custodian. If you are an individual investor, be it rich or poor, I mean a retail investor, and you want to connect yourself directly to all those services, you can do that. That's the beauty of decentralization. That's the beauty of blockchain in general. But many high net worth individuals or investors in general and retail customers do not want to deal with the complexity of managing a wallet or connectivity to those services. They just want the benefit of it, which can be a yield paid to them on a monthly, weekly, daily basis, and an easy access to those services. So that's, I believe, what third-party custodians can do, is provide a single window access to the assets you own, and a way to deploy those assets into those decentralized and centralized open finance offering out there, with the peace of mind that nothing's going to go wrong. And if something goes wrong, it can knock at the door of third-party custodian to ask for solutions.
Thank you for that. Anyone has anything to add to that?
Is on-chain custodian licensed?
We are exempt of a license in Singapore at this stage, as we are currently applying for the digital payment, for digital payment tokens, so the PSA license. Yes, that's right. And we want to be licensed because we believe that, as for exchanges, that's the only way for this industry to become mainstream.
PSA has no custodian.
Unfortunately, at this stage. So we are applying for PSA for the cash out, cash in service that we have for our customers, as well as the remittance process that we do as part of our business. And custody will be part of the PSA as per MAS words by the end of this year or beginning of next. So we're gearing up to ensure that we will be already licensed and just tick an extra box when custody will be part of the PSA.
Because it's almost impossible to get a trust license in Singapore.
Yes, and a trust license is not the ideal setup, honestly, to do custody in Singapore. It might be in Hong Kong, but it's not in Singapore.
Yep, exactly.
Interesting. Thank you for that. James, is there anything specific about DeFi that you see as growing, especially in the next a year or two? And it can be anything about DeFi.
Yeah, I'm a regulated broker dealer as well in the United States, so I'm right on the front line from a regulatory standpoint, and it's been anything but fun over the last 2 years. In fact, FINRA and the SEC early on took a very antagonistic perspective of it. And I think it's changing a little bit, but you're still guilty until proven innocent with the regulators in the United States. So trying to be too innovative is actually a problem. There's a phrase that says, pioneers catch all the arrows. And I've caught a few arrows doing digital securities, etc. So over the next year, I think it's, given kind of the decentralized nature and virtual nature we all live in now anyway, I think it's going to turn, but I think it's going to be a slower pace than most people anticipate. I personally don't actually get into the technology myself. I'm more of a user of other fintech technologies. So for me, it's aggregating those. We have a platform we use to online 506c platform for most of our activities, and we integrate a lot of fintech APIs, et cetera, into our offerings, because at the end of the day, you want your securities offerings to have everything as easy as you possibly can. People don't like friction, so you need to take the friction out of the system, and we're getting there. But you're still going to see a fair number of hurdles over the next couple of years as technologies become embedded. You've got to understand how at least U.S. regulators look at it. They look at it as something is wrong until it's proven right. And so it's innovation has been frowned upon in the DeFi kind of blockchain era, and that has it's kind of how it was started. People seem to forget that most technologies that historically come from bigger organizations down. Well, this blockchain and other related technologies came from the little guy coming up, and it's really the first time in financial history that's happened, and it's thrown everybody off. So you don't get the buy-in that you would normally see in typical market innovation.
I completely agree. Anyone would like to add to what James just mentioned? Okay, moving on to the next question. Calvin, I wanted to ask you as an investor, what kind of risks do you see with DeFi? And I'm asking from your eyes as an investor, not in general the industry. What risks are you trying to avoid?
Well, from an investor perspective, I think investing in DeFi, there's quite a number of risks. One of them definitely is the regulatory risk, which is definitely coming. No countries, no banks likes decentralized finance, for sure. Okay, it is something that they cannot control. And especially coming from China, within the next few months or within the next 6 months at most, you will see that China will have a huge play in the whole entire blockchain finance system, which will see decentralized finance and stuff greatly affected. Okay? I can't say it now, but bear in mind that you all heard it first here, and you will hear it in 6 months' time. So these are the kinds of regulatory stuff that worries us. Another thing that worries us is that is the DeFi product or services too early for the market. Now I can give a very good example in Singapore. Okay, that somebody launched pay with crypto product all over Singapore 2.5 years ago. Okay, and last year they closed shop. Right, so right after they closed shop, end of last year, another one pops up and took over the whole market. And today, every single crypto went to them and said, "Hey, please list me. I want my crypto to be able to pay for a cup of Starbucks." Okay, so it's all about timing. So the former one was probably too early, 2 years early, and this one is probably about the right timing. Okay, if anybody in Singapore today, over 1,500 outlets, you can actually spend your crypto easily. Just scan, click, and you can spend it already. Okay, so these are the two things. Regulatory is definitely one, and then timing is another. It's the risk that we look at.
Thank you. James, do you have anything to add to that?
No.
Thank you. Moving on to a next question. And I think that we are going to have this question as the last one as our times run out. Alessio, I would like to ask you, is Alessio still with us?
I think he left. He has actually a wedding anniversary today.
So I'll ask you, Alexandra. I'll ask you, what do you think, how can a centralized custody play a role in decentralized finance systems?
Well, actually, it's not that we are so much centralized. We are managing wallets which are decentralized on behalf of our customers. So we are alleviate the pain of customers who don't want to manage the complexity of managing wallets and private keys and so on and so forth for them. Yes, there is a centralized component to it in the sense that there is a single potential point of failure. That's why we have insurance to cover any risks, and as well as the enterprise grade technical and operational environment required to do that centralization of service. But in terms of technically, those wallets are still managed on a segregated fashion and are and can therefore be connected to any decentralized services that are out there. So so that's the role I think we play, is convenience and compliance and security around management of assets and the wallets that can be there connected to any decentralized finance services that our customers would want to be connected to. So that's the role, I think, of third-party custodian in that decentralized world.
Gentlemen, I'm sorry, we have to finalize our conversation.
Yeah. I was saying that's the last question. And now I will just ask the panelists to say any final words if they have anything to say. If you would like to mention how you can be reached and contacted, please feel free to start. Calvin, anything that you would like to say as last words?
Last word, don't give up, continue. Somebody will become the next Amazon in DeFi. And you can contact me at Kelvin at Plutus, PLUTUS.vz.
Thank you for that. James?
James Rao, Intoro Capital. It's JROW at Intoro.com. One thing I would leave everybody with is that I think, decentralization is more than just a single technology. It's a concept and a philosophy and the kind of the way of the world. It's not just a single component. I think it's bigger than that. And I think it goes to all aspects of technology and life. I think we're just focusing on one silo of that activity, but I think it's broader than that. And I think you're seeing people wanting to have more individualism and more control of their own finances and their own activities.
Absolutely, I agree with that. Thank you. Alexandra, do you want to have any final words?
So we have a website, obviously, like any company. Just Google on-chain custodian, and the website is oncustodian.com. You'll find everything there. And we're happy to discuss with decentralized finance, as we already do with a few of them, to hook them up on our platform and enable our customers to use their service. So please connect with us. I think it's a industry collaboration that we will lead to mainstream adoption.
Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for participating. And Sergey, I'm giving it back to you.
Yes, Evan, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for your greatest moderation. Yes, thank you guys that being here. It's really amazing for this really amazing discussion. I will see you a little bit later. I have to go to another panelist, to another speaker. Just see you a little bit later. Yes, bye.
Bye-bye for now.
Okay, bye.
Teams meetings. I'm not quite sure how efficient they are. I multiple them with 20 or something compared to previously. So
really? Right.
But that's good. Great to hear you.
Yeah, all good. I mean, I stopped all my travel end of January when I heard that it was quite serious. So I stopped from a trip in, I was speaking in Miami and London and what have you. And before that was just crazy. Like 100 flights in 77 months or something like that. So I said, thank God this was a blessing in disguise, you know?
Yeah, I know. No, actually, when Norway shut down on the Thursday, I was in London, and Ireland shut down the schools and kindergartens on that Thursday as well. So on Friday, when I was traveling out of the center of London, normally that's to Heathrow, that's an hour plus. I spent 20 minutes on that ride.
Crazy,
so crazy. Yeah. I will leave the panel to you guys now. I presume it starts in a minute, and I will join.
Are you involved in this, Magnus?
No, I'm in the next panel.
Are you on the next one?
Yes.
Okay, so you've just joined in.
Yeah, I just joined in to test the link here.
Great stuff. So, we're all doing the same shit, man.
Yeah.
Oh, Katrina.
See you around. Good luck, bro.
Cheers, buddy. Yeah, see you, Magnus. Katrina, you need to unmute yourself. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
We can. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you as well.
You okay?
Perfect.
Montenegro, I mean, it can't be a better place to be in lockdown, right?
True.
Ladies and gentlemen, give me a couple of seconds. We go on air and we can start. Ekaterina, nice to meet you here. Yes, you're the moderator of this event. Just few minutes, not few minutes, 1 minute for me. Yes, you will see that live stream is ongoing.
Sergio, we can get a recording of all this, right?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, okay. Who else is here? I see Manuel is there. Hello, Manuel. You need to unmute.
Hello, nice to meet you.
And
nice to meet you, Manuel.
Gosh, I've met almost everyone. Anthony as well. Hello, Anthony.
Hi, finally.
How are you doing? But I haven't seen you since Oslo. When was it? I can't even remember. Or Dubai or wherever it was.
It's been a while.
Exactly. How are you all? All good? It's a bloody small world when it comes to it, this place.
Okay, guys, now we are on air and our panel discussion is going to be moderated by Ekaterina. Ekaterina, your turn. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. So today we are going to discuss future money about private banks, central banks, and blockchain technology currency. So let me introduce the speakers first. Here we have experts who have been really for a long time in the field. They are Mru Patel. He's co-founder of Better Exchange and also a chairman of Let's Beat Coronavirus. I'm really sorry, it's quite new organization. So.
No problem.
Anthony Lay, with over 20 years experience in investment banking and also fund management of centralized finance. And also Manuel Batista, who is actually involved in Amethyst Asia Fund family office with also great experience in blockchain in different fields. And me, Ekaterina Volkova, co-founder of Rio DeFi, a blockchain technology company that basically is a bridging traditional and decentralized finance. So let's start. First of all, now we see that DeFi is changing the landscape of traditional finance, and lots of companies are looking at decentralized finance as something new and that something that they would like to implement in itself, but also private banks and central banks are also doing the same. So first of all, I would like to ask you, what do you think about DeFi? Could it displace traditional financial ecosystem like private banks, centralized platforms, as well as lending platforms and centralized exchanges? What is your opinion, Mru?
Okay, so thank you for Digital Week Online. My view is it's not new. So if you take it back to traditional days, people were doing peer-to-peer lending. If you wanted some money, you went to your father, mother, brother, sister, uncle, whoever, and you were doing peer-to-peer lending. Only it was not called DeFi, okay? So it was generally done through a piece of paper or no paper. So it was basically based on one key thing, which is trust, okay? Roll it forward now, and we are now into blockchain and internet. So my background is from Java and Sun Microsystems when it all happened. Even in those days when we were talking about Java and internet in the 90s, I remember having a argument with Steve Ballmer with his .NET, saying, you know, it has to be anytime, any place, network is the computer and all these things, meaning give the power to the people and let them decide what to do, how to buy, and buy. In those days, we used to call it C2C, okay? Roll it forward, it's now blockchain and DeFi, okay? Decentralized finance is already happening. People are doing peer-to-peer lending only now with legal ways. So your question about will it replace private banking? My view is it's got to a point where trust has already been established, okay? So now people are used to buying things off the internet. People are used to shopping without even seeing who the retailer is or anything like that. So there's an element of trust being built, and there's lots of security and trusted authorities with legal legislation in place. So what DeFi, in my view, is going to do in the next 5 years is it won't displace private banking, but what will happen is the private banks and the clients more specifically will try to beat up the private banking organizations. And I'll give you a classic where, you know, Jamie Dimon, you know, dare I say it, 3 years ago when he crashed, or 2.5 years ago, where he crashed the market. I mean, as a big private banking organization, they were out there scared. So all the private banks are scared like anything. So he crashed it, but they were buying it and they were preparing their own platform in the background. Lo and behold, look at what they are doing now. They are doing exactly the same thing. So I don't think it will replace it, but it will work somehow in tandem. But there will come a time in not the distant future where the majority of the lion's share will be into new ways of doing DeFi-based solutions. I hope that gives you a good high
Thank
level.
you so much. I also would like to ask Anthony, because he's from traditional financial world, and basically he spent there more than 20 years. So maybe he has another opinion, because I think he's also talking to these guys from private banks, and maybe he would tell that no, DeFi actually doesn't have that much trust, and it's not coming to action quite soon.
Well, yes, from a traditional banking point of view, I think, yes, that we still need commercial banks, we still need private banks, and they're serving their purposes. And now that what I'm seeing in the DeFi space, there are more and more credible organizations that are coming up. They're still centralized, but slowly, eventually, they will become more decentralized. And now with Bitcoin is decentralized in the true sense of it, and people get it. They trust. They're now, even though they're not using Bitcoin as transaction, but many more people have come onto the cryptocurrency space, and they want to have an action in this, right? So it may not be Bitcoin in the future that will power this decentralized finance, but it could be some other cryptocurrencies. It could be something that we don't know yet. Maybe it's not been introduced to the market yet. But I think there are definitely, like what Muru was saying, that the people are getting more, they're trusting some of these organizations that have come up, and the trust has been built. And now that later on we will talk about central banks coming into this space, right? We will park that later on. But the fact that there are some central banks that are already doing some sort of pilot testing and all that. So it is adding some credibility in that. But private central banks are by nature centralized, so it doesn't really, in my view, it doesn't really come in a competition with DeFi. So DeFi is serving another segment of the market, and it may not be the institutions that are now still very reliant on commercial banks. So I see it more of like these DeFi and centralized entities probably will work with each other, especially when the CBDC come into the market. It invariably it has to be some centralized party, like a central bank, guaranteeing what is the currency behind it. But there will be a second tier or third tier where this will be decentralized in a way that there will be intermediaries. It could be other financial institutions that's facilitating movement of this CBDC. So it may just converge with the DeFi of what we know, but I feel that it could be not as simple as what we see as a DeFi, because central banks in the world are also thinking along this line. They are trying to decentralize, but they won't come up with a one tier kind of currency. They won't come up with a cryptocurrency, right? So there will be a certain element of decentralization, but it wouldn't be the way we see it today.
So basically, I totally agree with you, Anthony, because especially regarding central banks, I don't think that they would go with decentralized finance so easily. And for sure, we will see quite shortly CBDC, how it's going to operate. Especially, we already see, as we know, it's starting in China, in Sweden, and it's ongoing in some other countries. But I also would like to ask Manuel. Manuel, what's your opinion about DeFi? Like, could it replace, for instance, crypto lending platforms, or traditional banking investment platforms? Because as far as I know, you have EXW wallet, and inside this ecosystem, it's so global that maybe you have some special opinion about this.
Thank you. First of all, thank you, Digital Week Online, for inviting me. And I think, as being allowed to speak after two experts in the blockchain space and in the traditional space, my opinion is that it will be definitely a mixture of both. So the DeFi world and everything what is coming. And as Mr. Patel said, and he was speaking about 5 years, what I think, and my opinion, is that unfortunately, as most of will agree, that the coronavirus and everything what happened was bad and is still bad for the world. But in terms of us speaking here about blockchain and finance, it accelerated for sure the development in terms of online banking and future of payments. And like this, I agree fully with Anthony when he said probably the players which will be in this field and they will be more operative, they are not yet in the market, and they're going to come up in the upcoming months or years, that they have been preparing for it. And I have my opinion on this, that in this time of coronavirus, they accelerated their work due to the fact of the lockdown and due to the fact that the developers, they could create even more work and finish that. So I think it will be a mixture between traditional and DeFi, but the adaptation of DeFi will be huge and will become more and more in the upcoming years. And also the fact of the possibility that is possible all over the world and be reachable with certain systems, also not only internet-based, but with different technologies, so that people also in South America, Africa, they will have online accounts and they wouldn't have traditional bank accounts by now. But for them, it will be easy to have an online account and use a decentralized finance system on their phone, and being able to get back to the point of Mr. Patel, to do the trade and to have this trust in between people. So this is my opinion in terms of DeFi and traditional banking.
Yeah, and it's a good point, if I may, Katrina, what Manuel's saying. If you think about it, there's still about 2 billion plus people who are not banked or underbanked. And even the people who are banked, there is another billion in my view. In America itself, if you look at it, people are still getting paychecks the way they go to even a gas station to get their salaries. So people are, not banked properly. And this trust element, and I, by the way, I'm an EXW wallet holder as well. So, and I have my own wallet as well, where we are looking at those places where it goes back to what I started with 30, 40 years ago, where people were lending money peer to peer. So with these wallets, people will be able to do it so easily because they'll know who the other person is. And if they know there's a smart contract behind it with some collateral, be it their crypto asset, which is marginalized or leveraged or something to loan someone money, why not? Cut the solicitors, cut the bloody banks. Sorry. I mean, even 3.5 years ago, with Tim Draper and people like that, we were having debates to say in 5 years, you will see 50% of at least the retail high street banks disappear. It's already happening. If you look at what Manuel was saying as well with the coronavirus, now people are absolutely confident that they need online banking. It's made them do online banking, so people have learned this skill. So it's not only just the millennials. So it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. The intelligent all-in-one smart wallets will rule, and people will do peer-to-peer loans.
I totally
I
agree.
also want to ask everyone, right? How about the cryptocurrency exchanges now? They are all centralized, and we've been talking about decentralized exchanges and all that. And there are a number of projects that are on the market. But do you see them gaining traction, rivaling some of the centralized exchanges?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a centralized exchange, and before that, as you know, I was with another exchange. So this exchange is partly centralized, but the main thing is about trust. People at the end of the day want to know who to point to. 99.9% of people don't realize that whether it's centralized or decentralized, all they care about is, can I do a buy, sell, put, call type of a trade? Mm-hmm. All they care is, how secure is my money, and will I get the kind of trade we will get? It's us people in the blockchain industry who are screwing up, sorry to say, people's minds and making it so complicated with all this jargon and technology to solve a simple problem. I want to do an exchange in the most secure, trusted manner. End of story. When internet started, I used to say this in the 90s with Sun, that, why do you care how the IP and DNS hosting and all this happens? Who cares, right? Just solve people's problem, nice and simple. So yes, decentralized is good, but centralized good as well. That's my view. Make it easy for the people.
But do you think that new millennials, they would go more for decentralized exchanges because it would be something, let's say, modern, promoted or something? Because as we see, lots of people are going into blockchain space, not only because it's so unique, but because it's kind of a new fashion as well.
Yeah, I think the people who will go, even in the millennial space, not everybody is blockchain savvy, all right? So let's be honest. So the people who are blockchain savvy, yes, they might get anal about mine is centralized, mine is not centralized, mine's based on a stable coin, mine's on a utility coin, mine is this, mine is that. So, if you get down to reality, when money first started by bartering and then gold or minerals and then paper money, and then paper money got normalized, we are just going through that phase. That's all. So as long as they know that I'm giving you this $1, €1, £1, whatever it is valued at €1, $1, that's all they care about.
Totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
And as Anthony mentioned, also he started to talk about central banks and how they would react. So I would like to ask you, because you've been so much involved in all these government talks about fintech. I know your experience, it's quite broad. So what do you think about central banks? Would they go with the new digital currency like CBDC, or I don't know, synthetic CBDC? What do you think?
Who you asking?
I would like to ask all of you, but I would like to start Mru first, because he has been like, I remember our talks in Malta, blockchain summit,
yes.
and yeah, he was so much involved in this government stuff and fintech. So I really curious to hear his ideas about that.
Yeah, well, if you remember, it made the Malta Times headline the next day. So basically, you know, a lot of governments, in my view, are scared. They're scared for two reasons. They are going to lose control, okay? And they are also scared that now, you know, the treasury, the central banking, and all this system is not something that is in some places. I mean, I don't want to be someone to do all this rumor mongering, but you know how the treasury is handled and who's behind it and who controls the money and the printing of money, and you know whether it's up or down against other currencies. So all this is controlled via certain bodies. And what we are doing in the blockchain crypto space is taking it all out in a decentralized way. So what's happened in the last 5 years, banks have been watching from the sidelines, and I gave the example of Jamie, but you can look at most banks. They all say, oh, no, this will never take off. This will never take off, right the way through to some of the biggest economists. And, you know, you look at Nouriel Roubini, for example, and having spoken to him, even chatted today with him, you know, he has a view that Bitcoin, shitcoin, it will never happen. It doesn't have any value, la, la, la. I ask everybody, in that case, why is a huge country like China doing a digital coin? Why is UK doing a digital coin through the central banking system? They both have two separate strategies in how they do it. You know, one is doing a platform based, one is doing slightly controlled. Okay, China has an agenda. I think personally, on record even, their agenda is they don't want to be dependent on the dollar, okay? And they want their currency to say, why is 70% of the world's trade happening in dollar and not Chinese yuan? So this is their way to start stage one, because they can do all those arguments. It's no control. We are digital. We are instant, no cost, no SWIFT, no SEPA, none of this banking types of costs. So the yuan, the GBP, and all these people are doing it. So yes, it will happen. It's only which model works out best will come out over the next couple of years, my view.
And
hello, Rico.
Anthony, what do you think? Because you are mostly like representing Asian side, so maybe you have any other ideas about that?
I mean, we go back to the China CBDC, right? So China now, of course, China has an agenda. One is to mainly to move a lot of the trades into renminbi. The internationalization of renminbi started in early 2000, right? So now, basically, most of the ASEAN countries can clear renminbi. You've seen all those dim sum bonds and all that. Those are initiatives that PBOC have been coming up with different ways of trying to get more people to use renminbi offshore, right? And with the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, and even more attractive now, if, for example, because now they're coming up with the current model is a two-tier system, right? So it's not a direct from central bank to the man on the street. They do it deliberately because they're also aware that most of the biggest banks in China are state-owned, right? So they don't want to disintermediate the bank, so to speak. Basically, they don't want to compete with the commercial banks, right? Imagine if a man on the street can now place money savings deposit with a wallet, digital wallet, for example, place it with the central bank, right? Then a commercial bank or retail bank will no longer be able to garner deposits, because most commercial banks rely on two, either interbank funding or wholesale funding. Third one, the most sticky one, is actually retail funding, right? So if you can't gain access to very sticky retail funding, which you pay very low interest, and then you lend them out, so banks will find that they don't have enough deposits, so they don't have enough funding, so they will have to go into the interbank to borrow money. So who do they borrow from? From the central bank. So the central bank will become lender of last resort to the commercial banks. So eventually they become, central bank become one bank and all the banks close shop. It can't be, right? So I think what China is trying to do is, while they are introducing this digital currency, they don't want to render the commercial banks obsolete in that sense. And at the same time, central banks don't really have the experience of dealing with men on the street in terms of retail or even companies, right? So they mainly have infrastructure working with financial institutions. They do interbank lending and all that, right? So they don't have the necessary probably experience or even infrastructure to handle that kind of volume as well. So instead of reinventing the wheel, so most likely they are going to use all the existing banks as a tier two, where they will distribute these currencies to, and all this CBDC will be 100% backed by reserves from the bank, right? So that eventually every CBDC that is issued will be central bank guaranteed renminbi, for example, right? And if you look at it from a China perspective, if they're able to do that, pushing it through the commercial banks and Alipay or Tencent, right? So the adoption rate will be much faster, and because people are already familiar with Alipay, WeChat, and all that, right? So once that is gathering traction, the next phase, I believe they will move that into the trading partners along the BRI, the Belt and Road. Central Asia, for example, a lot of these countries will be selling commodities to China, and China, of course, will be selling some of their products to these Central Asian countries, eventually European countries. These countries will also have the incentive of not using dollar, because it is definitely more expensive for them to exchange their currency into dollar instead of trading into respective commonly maybe if it's a renminbi, because that is a two-way flow between these two countries, for example, right? So they are able to buy, sell in that currency without having to convert their local currency into US dollars. And of course, the last thing would be countries that are prone to sanctions by USA, right? So eventually, if they don't need to convert or do trades in US dollar, they can bypass SWIFT. So the way I see it, if this CBDC is not just China, right? Other countries are coming out with their own CBDC, and they are eventually not just within the country, they are able to trade with the trading partners in another agreed currency, digital, but non-US dollars. That will reduce the reliance on US dollar and also reduce the cost of Forex, for example. So it is definitely very attractive for various central banks to come up with some solutions so that they are able to, mainly is to reduce costs as well and make it more effective. But countries that are always in the limelight, or kind of like always being highlighted as sanctioned countries and all that, they will find this very attractive to them. So I think it's not just China. There are other countries probably will want to really seriously taking a look at this this new trend.
Basically,
Anthony,
I would like to ask Manuel, because he is like in Europe now, and I know that France just announced that they successfully tested just first steps of new digital euro. So I would like to ask your opinion, like how it will be. Will Italy use it, and will the whole Europe use it? Manuel, we don't hear you.
as I'm Italian, so let's see if Italy is going to use it. The factor will be a bit different in terms of technology and if the country is ready for such improvement or not. But hopefully, because in my opinion, there will be in the next decades there will be lots of retail CBDC created, and there is always I think you can speak about 4 major reasons why they would be. And as Anthony said, there's like this huge fact that lots of countries, they want to get away from the fact that it's all dollar based, and so to get this, and also to have as the different reason like cross-border payments, the digital identity, their own financial inclusion and financial stability and consumer protection in terms of this. And many countries strive for that so that they don't depend on the dollar, so that and with the possibility now of a CBDC, they will be able to literally be part of the game and get into this, and not having that base. And as I like China very much because I was a former professional badminton athlete, so I was very often in China, and I agree with Anthony, and also with something what we said before about DeFi. There is lots of systems existing already. There is Alipay, there is WeChat, and everything is like is in that direction. It will just be more, it will be more regulated, it will be more controlled. But the way to go, it will be that also governments, they need to get into this, and they will get into this. And not to be repetitive, but coronavirus showed it, and also coronavirus showed it. There is so many everywhere things that nobody would have expected 2 months ago, that you go to a store and you say we don't accept cash, but not because we want to be digital, but because it could have the virus. So but in terms of blockchain and in terms of a CBDC, it is necessary, and from different sources there's more than 60 countries already working on this. And officially we know all of what you mentioned. We know officially about China, Sweden, France, South Africa. And so I think this will be very, very interesting months ahead. And I say specifically months because I'm pretty sure that in the upcoming months there will be lots of new players in the game that are not government based, so that governments need to keep up with that, and to then get more into regulation and make the times harder for non-government bodies to be a financial matter. So this is I think where we are headed, and in my opinion. And I always think that it should never be like very drastic, like in one direction or in another direction. It is for sure going to be a mixture in the world, and I think this is also more healthy for everyone and for the world, that there will be the ones that stick to the old, and there will be the new, but there will be a dive into, and a speed up. So a very speed up. This is I really emphasize on the fact that I think it's insane, positively insane, that how fast things are moving, how fast we are getting into this, and how fast now from all of the last 10 years, which took 10 years, I think now we speak about few months.
I totally agree here.
Katrina, could I?
Moving fast, so the time I guess is running. I'm really sorry.
Just very quickly, I know we are going to talk about synthetic as well, but personally, I think there will be no one currency or one bank saying this is how it will happen. If you look at even some of the examples we talked about, being Alipay or whoever, in China or in various other parts of the world, you don't need a central banking currency. You just tap with your QR code and away you go. Who cares what is being paid by? So I'm sure the EXW, and we are doing it as well, where you hold your wallet with multiple accounts, multiple currencies, multiple cryptos, and you do it on the fly to your preference. So you don't have to devalue currency. This is where I think governments are going wrong. Their currencies, especially coronavirus, and America being the craziest one, is printing money like it's going out of fashion. So somehow someone has got to pay for this. So the dollar will get affected in the long run. And, God forbid there's a Cold War between China and America, and we start seeing threats of people calling back money and all this, what happens to the currency? So digital currency, in my view, with your wallet, you just tap and go, and you convert to whichever country you're in, whatever you're buying online. So central banks will have a place for large scale inter-world money, large scale oil, and big deals. Yes, but the day-to-day payments, I don't think they'll be able to control who chooses what currency.
Yeah, might be. I'm really sorry we have to finish. It was a really fantastic discussion. I was happy to see all of you, and thank you so much for your opinions. I guess we will see in the future how it will be in actual world. So thank you so much once more.
Thanks a lot, Ekaterina. Yes, and we are going forward with our next panel discussion. Rico is already here, and I have to.
Saw him.
I have to introduce other people. Rico, you can do it by yourself if you wish.
Yeah, but I think we have another panel on the system. Atty. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Could you bring her in as well, Atty?
No, Atty is not here.
She's in the website. She's logging using the website, the panel.
Maybe yes. Could you please share this with her if you can, or I can go it directly?
Okay, cool. I will do that. Just give me a sec.
Yeah, please. I will introduce our speakers, our next panel speakers. Guys, you can be here, stay with us, because very interesting discussion going ahead. Yes, it's no problem. Now, we are starting with Rico, co-founder and managing partner of FIDO Protocol. Next panelist is Sanctum Venture from Sanctum Venture. Panelists are Magnus Jones, Mudit Dawar, Jacel Acoronto, and James Rowe. I want to be sure that all the names or surnames I say correctly. And now, Rico, the word goes to your side.
Hi, I'd like to introduce some of our panelists here today. We have Magnus from Ernst & Young. We have James Rowe from Antoro Capital LLC, and we have Mudit Dawar from Global Blockchain Organization (GBO). And I'm trying to get Atty on us. She has joined and still waiting for the host. So I think there's some technical issue there. Let me just send her the link to join using the Zoom call. Before that, I think let's continue with the discussion while waiting for her. I think let's start with Magnus. Magnus, would you mind to share with us some of the things that Ernst & Young is doing in the fintech space, and share with us some of your experience working with the regulations around that as well? Thanks.
Sure, happy to. We do a lot of things, obviously, as EY is a large player within the fintech in general, but if we narrow it down to the blockchain DeFi element, we work quite thoroughly with this. We have more than 1,000 consultants who has an in-depth knowledge of this. We have 14 blockchain hubs all over the world, so hence we have great experience for many years. So of course, we've seen there has been a journey where we have had great dialogue, specifically where I am located in the Nordics, with the government, specifically financial supervisory authorities, etc. Remember, say 3.5 years plus ago, when we first approached them with the client, it was 15 people in the meeting. 10 of them fell asleep. 5 of them, the 5 of the others were trying to understand what this blockchain Bitcoin thing is. So it has evolved since then. Now they have a special task force group on it. It's 7 persons in Norway who has an in-depth knowledge. They know exactly what you're asking for. They ask the right questions. So hence we see a great movement. So yes, there has definitely been great clarity towards this in the last couple of years, but that's down to the fact that we and lots of other stakeholders has invested a lot of time on education towards them, because this is not something that you can expect authorities to have a good overview of out of the blue. It's too many call it shit coins out there to have a full overview that you cannot demand and request that authorities actually will have an overview, but it's definitely going in the right direction, talking of blockchain cryptos in general, I would say. So we see positive movement towards this. When you go into the DeFi area, that's too young at the moment. So authorities, they have a overview of what's moving, but they don't have the necessary resources to look into it. They have to focus on the ordinary crypto market. So hence, they see what's moving, but they don't have a focus area on it. And hence, that's the reason for why all DeFi projects all over the world are allowed to run without any governments interfering with them at all, in the way that I see it.
Great. Thanks for that, Magnus. We have Cotisil Cotoro from Union Bank Philippines. Hi, Sil.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. Do you mind to share with us some of the success where Union Bank has developed fintech in the past, and also which blockchain the Union Bank was testing and collaborated?
Okay. I guess one of the main successes of Union Bank, and so far as developing and really harnessing the value of fintechs, is one of which is the existence of my group. The existence of my group, we're called the FinTech Group, our group was precisely established for that purpose. Our mandate is to explore, assess, and generate all the possible synergies that the bank can have with fintechs. So what do? It ranges from simple referrals to integration of fintech solutions to traditional bank functions like payment, trade finance. One other manifestation of this success is the establishment of our fintech arm, which is the UBX. It's an investment in fintech subsidiary. It's a developer arm of the bank where we are able to explore investments in fintechs that have complementing capabilities. And we are also able to develop and invest more in all of these solutions that are out there from the fintechs. Insofar as blockchain is concerned, we've had a number of projects and initiatives that are specific to exploring its potential. We've had I2I is one of the main successes of the bank. It stemmed from a research and development initiative from the bank that was eventually turned over to our UBX, our developing arm. What it does is that it uses blockchain technology for the remittance payments from within rural banks, and there's also another part of it. It actually have another initiative which is Send I2I. It's still in its developing stages, but the goal there is to also connect other countries, for example, OFWs or overseas Filipino workers in Singapore. The goal there is to use blockchain technology to enable these overseas workers to send remittances to their family members in the rural banks, which are remote areas within the Philippines. We also have our Bitcoin ATM. This is the use of obviously the Bitcoin platform. This machine enables Union Bank customers to buy and sell Bitcoin using the machine, but obviously the parameter or the control there is that the KYC is based on the KYC that the bank does for its customers. We also have used Hyperledger for our financial supply chain. This facility uses blockchain technology for connecting buyers and sellers and dealers and suppliers. That it enables them to do their sales transactions and even provides financing options to both dealers and suppliers using only one facility. So it's a consolidation of dealer and supplier financing.
Great. So since you guys, your bank has implemented all these systems using a blockchain and fintech, were there any challenges that your bank was facing in terms of the regulations around Bitcoin ATMs and using all these solutions?
I guess the general difficulty or challenge that maybe doesn't only exist in the banking or financial industry, but anywhere where technology or new technology is concerned, it's that there is a tendency for regulators to kind of shoehorn new innovations into existing or traditional concepts insofar as established regulations are concerned. Fortunately, though, on the part of Union Bank, I would like to think that we are at an advantage because our central bank is very progressive in its thinking, and they have recognized this, maybe what you can call a limitation, and they've adopted a forward-thinking approach. One of the main manifestations of this is the test and learn approach, or the regulatory sandbox. What is it? It's mainly a recognition of the limitations that existing laws have. So it entails a continuing collaboration and discussion between the regulators and fintechs.
Right.
In that process, the regulators learn about the technology and the applicants learn about what the regulators are trying to address.
Right. Thanks for that, Seal. James, please share with us, like, from the USA part of things, how's eToro's investment into the fintech, into business, and how did it went so far?
Well, we have a number of areas. So we have, some of our investments are on the broker-dealer side, and some of them are on the transfer agent side, because we actually are both a SEC authorized transfer agent, and we are also a fully licensed broker-dealer, licensed in all 50 states in the District of Columbia. So we come at it from two different angles. On the transfer agent side, it's a newer operation for us, and we will be running it dual, both implementing a blockchain solution as well as traditional. And you have to do that because the SEC doesn't recognize blockchain right now for anything. So what we're doing is going to run dual systems. And then when they all of a sudden one day get religion, we will have already had it, and we'll already have our historical, and we won't have to back feed or integrate those systems backwards. So we'll just run dual books for a while, but you have to go traditional on the transfer agent side. When it comes to the broker dealer side, a lot of our efforts have been on just the base platform for activities, and it doesn't necessarily imply one particular technology. Our securities platform, offering platform is called Offerboard. It's been around for about 7 years or so, and it's what we use it for is an integrator of other technologies. So lots of API, etc. So in that particular part of our business, we are not an innovator of technology, but actually a user and an implementer of technology. So we get a lot of fintech companies wanting to participate with us, and we have a number of them. I think we have 5 or 6 that we integrate their technologies into our platform, because what we're focused on is connecting investors to projects. So we're about the distribution of securities for the most part, not creating a special technology or implementing a particular technology. We look at all of them as some way to facilitate the business, not create a particular technology.
So how do you find these technologies, being adopting and using them? How do you find them?
Well, I find them great, but adoption is slow, and a lot of it is age. I think a lot of people are resistant to change. That's just a normal human activity or instinct, unless they're forced to do it. I mean, think about what's happened the last 100 days or so. Most people hated video calls. Now it's just par for the course. It's what we do every day. I think there was a lot of miscommunication early on in some of the fintech technologies as well. So as soon as that kind of washes its way through and people start to understand that it's not the evil thing, but that's really the regulators, and I'll give it from a U.S. perspective. The regulators in the U.S. did 2 to 3 years worth of major damage on innovation and implementation of technologies, and they did it from fear, and the way they approach regulation since the 30s. It's kind of been that way. It's wrong until it's proven right, versus other jurisdictions which usually are faster to adopt. The U.S. regulators are very slow to want to grasp technology. They play a lot of lip service to it and have for the last 2 to 3 years. But you got to remember, for them, change is also difficult. And at the end of the day, it's job preservation.
Got it. Thanks for sharing that, James. Just trying to jump into that question about regulations with Magnus. From EY's point of view, what do you think the present regulations status are? Is it too strict, or is it all regulated from your point of view, Magnus?
Well, at the moment, no. If you look into DeFi, there's no core regulation on that area. So I wouldn't say it's too strict. It's rather, as I mentioned, governments are following it, but they don't have the resources or knowledge in depth now to dig into that and open cases, because they know they will spend years if they dare to open a case on this now. So I think one of the most important things here is rather that the industry itself needs to take action, and they need to understand that, well, decentralized, yes, that's great. And I remember a couple of years, 2.5 years ago, I had a couple of targets coming up to me and say, hey, Magnus, we're going to create this DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization. It's totally decentralized. There's no taxes, no regulation. Governments cannot do anything. And I was like, yeah, guys, that's cool, but slow down. Governments are going to regulate this in some kind of way. It's back to the old cliche about death and taxes. That's the two certain things in life, and governments will tax it, and they will trace it back to the creators of these projects. So I think it's more important that rather that we sort of focus that much on waiting for governments to come up with a regulation, which will take years just down to the normal procedures of putting an act into place or having a regulation. I think we need more clarity, more guidance, and then they need more education. So the whole industry needs to take that into consideration and don't pretend that this is just some kind of a magic financial system that will revolutionize everything and there will be no taxes. So I think that the industry needs to have that in mind and rather facilitate and makes it easier for governments to control this. Because you can say, well, it's open source, the code is out there, but still whether or not it's a government or if it's the users, the majority of people out there, even though the code is available, they cannot read it and cannot understand it. It's complex products. So I think the industry needs to wake up there and sort of self-regulate themselves, create call it a code of conduct, and I think that's the way to move in the same way as we saw, with Bitcoin and the crypto market in general. At the start, none of the traditional banks liked it because they didn't understand it. Now they understand it a bit more, but they don't like the totally decentralized things like the untraceable coins like Monero, Zcash, Dash, Words, etc. They don't like it at all. And in the same way, governments will not like totally decentralized. So I think we need to wake up and see that it's not going to happen overnight by turning a switch, that everything is going to be decentralized. We need centralized parts of it. I think we will move over to decentralized in the longer term. But in order to make this likable for governments, I think the whole industry needs to realize that and wake up a bit and don't pretend that it's going to turn everything by flipping a switch overnight here.
Great. Thanks for that, Magnus. Mudit, do you mind to tell us more about what the Global Blockchain Organization role is in the blockchain space?
Yeah, absolutely. Morning, everyone. Early morning out here in California. So GBO, basically, to give everyone some context, is an initiative of the Alternative Development Organization, which is based in Oslo. And GBO basically is working to create a global platform for public-private exchange and cooperation in governance of the blockchain technology deployment, education, and best practices. We're a nonprofit organization that brings together governments, policymakers, regulators, corporations, blockchain industry experts, and academic and research entities under the new model of blockchain diplomacy to bring out socio-economic empowerment. So 3 tracks: governance, best practices, and education. Our mission is basically to simplify and enhance the adoption and proper utilization of blockchain technologies through our 3 tracks that I shared. Exactly what Magnus sort of alluded to, where we work with especially policymakers to bring them up to speed, and it's a gradual process. So that's sort of where we stand in our working to create our position in the blockchain space.
Great. In terms of the regulations and conducts, global scene, is there any upcoming events or initiatives that GBO is planning?
Yeah, so we actually had a few engagements planned here that are getting pushed out because of the pandemic situation. However, within this year, depending on how the recovery works out within Q3, Q4, we are planning to have a closed door roundtable convening a handful of central bank and additional regulatory body representatives from across the world to discuss sovereign bank digital currencies, as well as a second roundtable that will convene state and local governments, again, from across the world that have been at the forefront of deploying blockchain technologies within various sectors, of course, within their respected domiciles and geographies. We are a new initiative. We were launched last year, late last year in December in Oslo, and then some of you were there within our for our launch event. So we would highly encourage you guys everyone to reach out if interested to get involved.
Great, thanks for that, Mudit. Just the last questions for all. I think we have about a few minutes left. Like, what is your vision of the fintech development in the fintech space, in the blockchain space, especially in the next 5 years? Who want to go first? Magnus, maybe you should go first.
Well, it's hard to predict the future, and specifically within the times we are within now. But as it has been mentioned previously on this event, I think due to the COVID situation, things will move swifter. It's you can call it it's a horrible event, but it has been for the benefit of the technology by itself, i.e. as James mentioned about telcos and everything, that video calls, that suddenly overnight everyone is used to this, and I think we will see a rapid change in that direction. However, I'm not totally convinced that DeFi products will be accepted for that reason by governments by nature, i.e. because at the moment you can dig into whatever conflicts of laws books you can open, and you will not find any specific topic regarding decentralized organizations or products. And hence that's the challenge for governments, because they, as mentioned, there's lots of legal aspects towards this about IP rights and other stuff, but mainly the taxes is the most important things for governments, at least in the days that we live today. So I think it's hard to predict. I think if venture cap and the larger investors are going to use this more widely, because at the moment we're like saying between 700 and 800 million US dollars within the DeFi space in general, and that's not much at all. But if that managed to evolve a bit more, we will see what do we have in the world today, 45, 50 million wallets in general. That's basically nothing if you compare it to the ordinary financial system. So I think it all depends on these factors, whether or not how we will see the fast movement or not. So I don't think I will make a prediction towards a 5-year perspective of where we will be, but I think we're moving in the right direction now, and I think things will happen much swifter than we could anticipate before just previous a year ago. So I think within 5 years a lot will have developed within the system, but as mentioned, it's given that also all the stakeholders in here are realistic towards what kind of products they're offering, and not just trying to pretend that, well, this is something that you cannot regulate and trying to run away with it. We have to comply with the ordinary system in order to move in a direction where we will see at one time we will come to a decentralized point. So that's my prediction.
Thanks, Magnus. What about you, Josil?
Yeah, maybe in the near future, well, at least to start off, there must be a recognition that regulations really always tend to just catch up with technology or activities within the economy. But you start with that recognition, and with that recognition, you also realize that the government has to have a progressive and collaborative approach towards regulation. So with this, it has to be a whole of government approach. It can't be just one regulator always more advanced than the others. So it has to be a whole of government approach, so that you also eliminate a defragmented approach towards new technologies or existing technology like blockchain. Only with that can you have a more, consistent and a faster approach in developing new regulation to address the existing risks that comes with new technology, but also obviously making it easier for fintechs and other institutions that want to adopt fintech solutions, to make it easier for them to actually do business using these new technologies.
Thanks, Seal. Hey, James, what do you think about that?
Well, I agree with Magnus. It's hard to predict the future, but the thing that I think is most important in all of these technologies and efforts, regulatory, et cetera, is really boils down to something called standardization. And once you get standardization, if you look back in history, once you have standardized contracts, standardized activities, if you look at the ISDA agreement, swaps agreement, once they had swap agreement in place, everybody agreed to that language in those contracts, then the market explodes with activity. So to me, all of these efforts have to step back and kind of look and say, how do you create a standardization? We're working on a number of efforts right now behind the scenes that, with various groups for standardization. And once you have that, I think you can really, you'll see advancements go at a much quicker pace. Regulatory, it's still going to be crawling. If you even look at the US system right now on changing, Reg CF, the original Reg CF was created in 2012. They're now just getting around to modifying it, the first true modification, and it's still in the comment period. It'll take 6-8 months just to change from $1 million to $5 million. So you're not going to see speed in regulation. Regulation is going to go at its own pace. And remember, government officials have no incentive to move things necessarily faster than they want projects to go. So you're not going to get it there. But to me, it all boils to the future is really based on, can you get things standardized?
Great. Thanks.
Yeah, just add to that I think it's extremely important for governments to create technology neutral laws, i.e. that we don't try to create one law like we did, or a regulation for ICOs, for example. By the time it took to get a proposal for that from the European Commission side, ICOs were dead and we had STOs, and the proposal wasn't going even to cover STOs then. So the world will always develop much faster than the regulation itself. So hence we need to pass the message to the lawmakers and governments that they cannot make technology specific laws. It has to be neutral, and they has to understand what the technology is, and i.e. rather give guidance and supervision, rather than, as you said, James, spend 6 to 12 to 18 months on updating some formality. It's much better to get core guidance, 2 A4 pages. This is how we interpret it from the financial supervisory authority, tax authorities, whatsoever. That's what the world needs, because it's evolving fast, and it's a cliche, but it will go faster and faster. That's for sure.
Thanks, Magnus. And lastly, Mudit, what do you think of the fintech's future in the next 5 years?
Yeah, I think I agree with all the panelists. Hard to predict the future. However, I think the coronavirus situation perhaps accelerates a lot of these developments. For example, the U.S. Office of the Comptroller of the Currency now has a new chief operating officer who was a chief legal officer at Coinbase before, and now there are suggestions to pass a payment charter which will allow for a federal regulation as compared to a state-by-state regulation, which should again accelerate the regulatory framework here in the U.S. The digital dollar conversation in the Congress has also taken a front seat yet again, and I'm sort of staying that with an asterisk, as well as digital RMB. So all the efforts are ongoing but very fragmented. So I agree with James' thought process or comment about standardization. I think we're still quite far out for that, but moving in that direction nonetheless.
Great. Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I think we will look forward to the next session afterwards. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Jesse, thank you, gentlemen. Yes, for your attention. Thank you for your invitation, and thanks for your engagement on this greatest panel. Our next speaker is here. Just please leave the room. Yes, we'll be online with you as well. And now, Pavel, go ahead. I have to finish my YouTube channel at this moment. Yes, Pavel, just wait a second, please. Give me just a second. Ты знаешь, что ты можешь расшарить и трансляцию тоже, все пойдет при надобности. Если у тебя есть презентации, нет? Нет. Что-то у тебя звук какой-то. Еще раз скажи что-нибудь. Раз, два, три. А что-то прям они как будто севшие.
Буду, мне ключевые.
CEO of, I just forgot about which company of CEO you are. Introduce yourself, yes. Yes, Distributed Lab, yeah. Pavel Kravchenko, CEO of. We are on air. The word goes to your side.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Pavel. My background is cryptography, and I've got a PhD degree in this field in 2012. My blockchain career started in 2014, where I joined Stellar in California and worked there. Then I moved to Singapore, worked for another startup, then was Germany, and meanwhile, like I established, co-founded an own company, Distributed Lab, that is doing a lot of R&D in this space for more than 5 years already. So we've done a lot of research, education. We wrote already 5 books. We organized like 25 conferences at least, like dozens of meetups and hackathons. So we've been quite active. And my topic of today is what is the role of blockchain in digital transformation in a country? We all know that blockchain is not just for, moving money or doing some, some simple stuff, but it's rather an approach. It's rather like a tectonic shift in a paradigm how people think. And the core concept here is decentralization, obviously. It's like when people used to like living in hierarchies where they have something at the top, somebody at the bottom, and then communicated like client-server architecture or so. And now the paradigm is shifting towards decentralization, where functions are executed at different places, at different roles, and they all have to like interact. And on the country's level, there will be a lot of changes too. And I've been personally involved in a few government projects. We've been building a POC for Central Bank of Ukraine and for the land registry and other like projects. And from what I see, it's like for centuries, information has been protected by the like brute force. There was a lot of like shields, secrecy, and everything had to be protected, was protected in a way that this was fully intransparent. And then Bitcoin appeared. It showed to everybody in financial industry, not only that, look, you can have a fully transparent system, which everybody can access, and you cannot really come and steal from this system. You see all the Bitcoins, but you can't take them. You cannot add more. It's like it's ruled by the mathematics. And that was the real interesting thing. And a lot of governments like NGOs, they realized that now information can be protected without hiding it, without making some firewalls and putting a lot of administrators and so on and so forth to like secure it. And basically that was the reason why government always said no to open APIs until very recent time. Now these activists have like a reason, actual like the proofs that you can secure information with cryptography and it still can be open. So my point is that there are many areas like public registries and systems that by default are public, right? And information in them can be freely accessible without the risk of compromise of integrity or of, in certain cases, even confidentiality of additional information. Non-repudiation can be protected, and so on and so forth. And government is reacting to a certain extent. And coming to the point, the blockchain will first as a new approach, a paradigm to build government systems on the systems that support citizens, will help to design new applications that are completely more transparent and more flexible. And this is very important because in a blockchain paradigm, all the modules, they can be fully independent, but still operate with each other using like open APIs. And here we come to the point we have to define what is blockchain. And obviously there are a lot of confusion in this space, because some people define blockchain as a Bitcoin blockchain, some people define blockchain as Ethereum blockchain or some else, and some their own thing. And this causes a lot of confusion, such as like blockchain is slow, or blockchain is inefficient, or blockchain requires a lot of energy, or and so on and so forth. And basically, instead, we should treat blockchain as a method to store and synchronize data between some participants. And as soon as we have different participants, they wouldn't trust each other 100%. It's still like they need to verify each other's actions. And that's exactly why blockchain was invented. And just in Bitcoin case, we don't even know how many participants are there, and they all don't trust each other 100% because they're all anonymous. In a simpler cases like enterprise or government, participants know who they are. They trust themselves, others to a certain extent, but still they need automation tools to validate contracts with each other, to send payments, and etc., etc. And this infrastructure is coming. Maybe it will take 5 to 10 years, but it is coming, and it will radically transform how society behaves. So treating blockchain in this way, we are having like cold-minded approach. We're not trying to put everything on blockchain, because it's a tool. It's not the means of. It's not the goal. It's just a tool to solve certain problems. And obviously, many approaches failed because in 2017-18, because people thought, okay, what it means to integrate blockchain. It meant for them issuing their own token and sell this token to somebody. And this is just, this is bullshit. So we have to abandon these approaches and just instead create systems that, first of all, employ the principle of open APIs. Second, employ digital identity for each, not an only person, but for each device. Then we should treat people and machines as equals, because on the internet, nobody knows that you are the cat. So, and then as soon as you have that, you can move towards transparency of data, or like provable transparency, where you know that certain data hasn't been changed. Maybe it's confidential, it's encrypted, but it hasn't been changed. So as soon as we have these three principles in place, blockchain will be implemented like everywhere in a few years, without even any executive order or the prime minister will push it. No, you just need open APIs, you need digital identity, and you need some regulation that says data should be accessible and register should be transparent. And the corporate level, it could be that financials are transparent, maybe again encrypted but transparent, and cannot be changed. So these three things will radically transform all accounting systems in every country, and will allow third-party developers to come up with applications that are using this data. And they will obviously use them better than any central planning on top that will, like, yeah. So we are coming to the decentralization of processes and data and data synchronization. And it's great because they can like unleash a lot of innovation in this space. So I would say these are the main principles and main steps towards full digital transformation of a country. It's nothing complicated. You don't have to learn smart contracts to implement them. You don't have to even know what is blockchain. You just need to know that open APIs, digital identity, and transparency, and that's it. And developers will figure it out the rest. So
sure, yes, Pavel, thanks a lot to you for sharing your ideas, your thoughts with our community, with the people which are watching now, all of us. And I think the best now, our time is finished and we have to say goodbye to you. Maybe just one question or maybe one just the closest words to our audience.
Question to an audience?
Yeah. think no. Yes.
That the question is, how do we prepare all the specialists who understand the principles and like the consequences of implementation of them? And maybe small announcement, we are launching, we have such courses that prepare such specialists from any like
okay, perfect. I would direct, if you don't mind, direct that answers on that question to you directly with the audience to have the communication with you. I want to say thanks a lot to you, Pavel. We are going ahead within a half of the hour. Bye. See you a little bit later.
Yeah.
Все, остановили эфир, все хорошо. Спасибо огромное.